Thanks so much for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm meteorologist Chris Bianchi checking in with another weather factoid for your day today. The big news that came out was that the drought monitor is just in. It showed some pretty substantial improvements around the Front Range in particular. We've seen throughout the summer a gradual improvement in drought conditions, and that's thanks to a lot of our recent rainfall that we've had, including what we had back on Monday and Tuesday. But just to maybe refresh your memory a little bit, on Monday, we had that really heavy rainfall across the South metro area. Some spots, in fact, quite a few spots, picking up more than 2 inches worth of rainfall. That is a lot of water for this part of the country. Remember, where we live here in Colorado, we average 14, 15 inches of rain a year. So when you get 2 inches of rain, even an inch of rain, that is a notable rainfall precipitation event for us here in Colorado. And again, on Monday, a lot of northern Douglas County as well as central Douglas County and a pretty good chunk of Arapahoe County picked up at least 2 inches worth of rainfall. And then a much wider area than that saw at least 1 inch worth of rainfall. So good, soaking, beneficial rain back on Monday. And then we followed that up on Tuesday, and specifically Tuesday morning. And our friends in Broomfield certainly won't forget this, where in Broomfield we picked up almost 4 inches worth of rainfall in less than 5 hours. Put that into context, that is more than a quarter of your typical annual rainfall in about 5 hours on Tuesday there in Broomfield. Now, that much rain was limited to really a small part of the city of Broomfield, but once again, we saw some fairly beneficial rainfall across a huge swath of real estate across the Denver metro area. And once all was said and done, most of the Denver area between Monday and Tuesday picked up at least 2 inches worth of rainfall, and about I should say about 60% picked up at least 1 inch of rainfall. I should say 80% picked up at least 1 inch of rainfall. 60% picked up at least 2 inches worth of rainfall. So hopefully that makes sense. Most of the metro area picked up at least 2 inches worth of rainfall. That is a ton of water, as I mentioned, for our part of the state. And I'll have more on how that impacted our drought monitor here in just a second. But once again, back on Tuesday, Broomfield picked up 3.7 inches worth of rainfall. That is more than double your typical full month rainfall in the entire month of August out there in Broomfield. Now, this was all mostly, I should say, a result of the monsoon. We also had a cold front working through. And just as a bit of a refresher, a reminder, this is how the monsoon works. So we usually this time of year, and as is the case right now, have the jet stream off to our north, right? What that does is it allows a subtropical area of high pressure to its south to draw moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and a monsoon low over the southwest to bring up moisture from the Pacific. So think of it as a bit of a double-edged sword. We've got two moisture sources, two big moisture sources, the wide open Gulf of Mexico, the wide open Pacific Ocean, and all that moisture, because of just general wind directions this time of year, pumping up straight into our part of the country. And then you kind of zip on in here on Colorado, and that moisture tends to impact areas particularly along and west of the Continental Divide sometimes, and this is what can happen, like what we had a lot of July here in the Denver area. Sometimes you get that monsoonal moisture, it gets kind of trapped in the mountains, and then as it tries to push its way into the I-25 corridor, it downslopes and it dries, and so sometimes you just end up with those kind of paltry storms. It looks really dark, looks like it's about to storm, and then you just get a few of these kind of raindrops on your windshield. Those kinds of storms, but in terms of getting those kind of big beneficial rain events, you often don't really get that. In the Denver area, you kind of need something else to provide that, but in the mountains, that's where you often get soaked with those big monsoonal rain events. Now, the drought monitor, this one just into us here from the U.S. Drought Monitor, and you can see that we've seen a little bit of improvement. And notice those blue areas, those are areas where we are now considered to be without any drought conditions. We're about 10% of the state now does not officially have drought conditions. And where we saw that improvement around the Denver area, notice that severe drought, that kind of orangish color north and east Denver, that was south and west of Denver as well. That has now been removed, and that's as a result of all that recent rainfall, all that recent beneficial rainfall that we've been picking up. Now, going back to what I was just talking about with the monsoon and how that tends to impact the mountains more than the eastern plains. Notice northeast Colorado with that red and even some of that purple. That is where, unfortunately, drought may be increasing. It's the northeastern fifth of the state where I'm a little bit concerned about what we've seen over the last 40 to 50 days or so, going back to the beginning of July, where we've just been mostly shut out from all that rainfall. Again, it's been mostly impacting the mountains and the immediate front range and metro area, but then you get east of there, and we've been mostly shut out along the front range. Now, in terms of that 7-day forecast and what we have to potentially look forward to, well, we do have scattered showers and storms here in the Denver area. Yes, fairly widespread. I don't think we're looking at anything like what we had back on Monday and Tuesday again, but we could be dealing with more widespread showers and storms in the mountains, and it looks like at this point that this weekend and especially Saturday could be pretty busy on up into the higher terrain. So if you're camping, hiking this weekend on up into the higher terrain, just keep in mind we do have some fairly widespread showers and storms, and that will of course benefit the drought, but of course that could impact any plans they might have this weekend. And as always, this is always the big takeaway here, folks, is keep in mind where those burn scars are. Just know that. Just know where the burn scars are. I would just say this. I'm a big camper, big outdoorsman myself. If I'm going up into the mountains, even, you know, I'm a meteorologist. I'm obviously somebody who would probably know a bit more about this, but every time I'm camping, I check where it is, and also I check on a topographic map, a map that has mountain features, to see if there's a canyon that could potentially shoot water down from a burn scar. So just point is, just take a quick look at the map and make sure it's not in a burn scar or near a burn scar, and you're gonna be okay. Most areas here in Colorado are not in or near a burn scar. Just avoid those areas this weekend because we could be looking at some fairly widespread rainfall and the potential for more flooding. But then again, there's that flip side of things where that's really good news for our drought, and we're seeing some substantial improvements on the drought so far, not only with this week's update, but all summer long with all that monsoonal moisture that we've been dealing with, which has been, again, a real boom for us here into the mountains in particular. So hopefully that answers some of your questions. And really, I think the big takeaway here, folks, I mentioned this back on Tuesday on Next with Kyle Clark, was that we've really seen some notable rainfall events that are putting more than a dent into our drought. We're seeing some substantial improvement, especially here around the Denver area and also on up into the mountains as well. So again, mostly good news to pass along. Once again, I'm Meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Chief Meteorologist Kathy Sabin's in at 4 and 5 with more on your Colorado weather. And Meteorologist Lauren Robinson will have updates at 6, 9, and 10 on the 9 News Family Networks. Once again, I'm Meteorologist Chris Bianchi, and have a great rest of your Thursday.